All right, let's now look ahead of that hearing that's starting tomorrow with legal practitioner and analyst, Advocate Modidima Mannya. A very good evening to you, Advocate. Thank you so very much for joining us here on SABC News, sir.
Good evening, Amanda. Load shedding in the village in Limpopo, so if my picture is not clear, it's part of the daily struggles of South Africa.
No, we completely understand that, Advocate. Thanks so much. All right, so we're looking forward, of course, to tomorrow. Of course, the proceedings begin at the ICJ. What are we to expect? You know, what are you expecting in terms of what we believe, the team will be bringing forward? I mean, you understand that, of course, that there's the case that's been brought against the state of Israel by the South African legal team, and we've certainly seen some bigwigs being put forward. But what exactly will be likely their biggest arguments and what they put forward to the court tomorrow?
Well, the International Court of Justice is a court like any other court, so the procedure would be the normal procedure that the applicants, which is the complainant, South Africa, will obviously start to state their case. Israel, the state of Israel, will be afforded an opportunity to state their own case, and there will be argument. And of course, at the end of the day, the judges of the court will make a decision. So what you should expect tomorrow is the opening statements and the addresses and the arguments, which will be put to the court for the relief that South Africa seeks against the state of Israel.
Yeah, I would believe that there's various legislation that South Africa is relying upon, and I want to talk about what South Africa is indeed taking Israel to the ICJ for, and that's, of course, the alleged violations of the crime of genocide. Which provisions in particular are we necessarily relying on or speaking of that would be using quite heavily from tomorrow?
Well, look, I mean, it would be difficult to go through the specifics because each of the parties would have filed heads of arguments.
Yeah.
But the fundamental issue here is whether the conduct of the state of Israel and its activities in Gaza constitute genocide. Genocide involves the killing of a large number of people with the aim of destruction or eliminating them. As you know, in Gaza, over 100,000 people have perished since the Israel Defense Force started its operation there. There's gross violations of human rights. People are displaced. Even aid is hard to come by. People are starving. So you can understand the gravity of the situation, and I think that's what South Africa intends to present to the International Court of Justice. The state of Israel, on the other hand, seems to be saying, look, we are in self-defense mode. And as you recall, this whole activity was triggered by the attack of Hamas in Israel. And Israel is saying, look, we are defending ourselves. And I'm not sure to the extent to which such a defense will hold when you take an entire defense force and go and target civilians in such large numbers and with so many people dying. So that's what's going to be the heart of the argument.
Yeah. When someone is brought to the ICC, I want to just talk about the ICC before coming to the ICJ. That country would have had to be a signatory to the Rome Statute. How does it work when we're talking about the International Court of Justice? Is Israel a signatory to a particular statute with which it would make them have to adhere to a certain set of rules that would make them, have to go to International Court of Justice, and the International Court of Justice having that sort of jurisdiction over them in a certain matter like we're talking today? I mean, do we have a sort of legislation like the Rome Statute that would make you have to succumb to the ICC, for example, is what I'm asking?
Yes, both South Africa and Israel are signatories to the Genocide Convention, which is the one that the International Court of Justice is enforcing. So there's no issue about jurisdiction.
Yeah. Could Israel somehow use that as an argument? And this is where I wanted to go. I mean, there have been instances where South Africa has had issue with the Rome Statute and being signatories to the Rome Statute. Could Israel say, in fact, we no longer want to be signatories to this particular set of rules?
Look, usually conventions of this nature make provision if you want to withdraw. and you just don't withdraw immediately. If you say, I no longer want to be party, there's a procedure to follow. And acts which were committed whilst you were a signatory, the court will retain jurisdiction. So it doesn't mean that if you commit atrocities and say, well, now I'm quitting, then you are excluded from the jurisdiction of the court.
All right. Do you believe that this is a good move by South Africa? I mean, I just read the headline that my colleague put up there, that, South Africa is determined to end the war in Gaza. How good a move is that for South Africa? And I think I'm stepping onto, international relations terrain, which might not necessarily be your terrain. I know you want to talk more than legalities, but generally, even from a legal perspective, is this a good move by the South African government?
Yes, it is a good move. I mean, if you look at it politically, and I think the president has said, we, the people of South Africa, have endured, of course, a lesser version of this brutality that the people of Palestine are enduring. So we associate with them politically. But secondly, South Africa's position would have firstly to be, let there be discussion, let there be negotiations, but as you can see, the state of Israel has literally rejected a ceasefire from everybody else. I think even if the United Nations General Assembly were to say there be a ceasefire, with the support of the United States, they would have said no. So indeed, South Africa's move is a very logical move, and I fully support it because it can present an opportunity for the International Court of Justice to make an order that may reduce at least the atrocities which are being committed on the people of Palestine. So it is actually a very good move.
Yeah, we don't know at this point what Israel will use as their defense here, but they've already started to say things like this is all an exaggeration. In fact, I think the word that they used there was that it's preposterous, that this case is being brought against them. How do you see this all sort of likely playing out, and how Israel will sort of respond in the ICJ to this?
Look, I think judging by the various reports which have been issued by various non-governmental organizations, if that were to be presented to the International Court of Justice, I think it would be almost impossible for the state of Israel to talk this nonsense of exaggeration. I mean, there's hard evidence, and this is independently obtained by aid organizations. I think the United Nations itself has expressed serious concern about the gravity of the atrocities there. So for me, I think factually, it is clear that there are gross atrocities which may border on genocide. The question, of course, is what mechanisms or what orders the court may make which will stop or reduce at least the gravity of the situation in the Gaza in particular.
All right, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for your input, Advocate Modidima Mannya, who's a legal practitioner and analyst there, of course, talking to us as, of course, the case does indeed begin tomorrow at the International Court of Justice.